Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Dialogues About Death show with your host, Chris Miller. Hey,
Good
Chris.
morning.
Good morning. How
Doing
are
great,
you?
Mary. I'm doing wonderful. It's a
Fantastic.
beautiful Friday morning out here in Southern California, and I'm ready to just seize the day.
I love that. I love that. Well, I can't believe it. This is our episode 7, which in the Bible is the number of completion or perfection. So it's going to be a
Perfect.
fantastic show.
Wonderful. I'm ready for it.
Awesome. All right. So we have found some questions that people have been asking about. And so we
Yeah.
titled the show today, Planning Beyond Life. And it's a little vague because we have kind of a lot of variety of questions that people have submitted. So,
Yes.
so we're, like I said, we're just going to get into it. Oh, also, I thought before we get started, Chris, I wanted to ask you
Yes.
a little bit about the upcoming event called Senior Fest, which you are
Yeah.
sponsoring next Wednesday. Tell us a little bit about that. And I'm going to go off screen while you answer that.
You bet. So next Wednesday, I'm really excited to co-sponsor with some other companies here in Corona. We're sponsoring Senior Fest 2024 here in Corona. It's going to be held at Crossroads Christian Church. We're anticipating two or 300 seniors from around the Inland Empire. We have vendors from all over the area that deals with senior needs. It's a free event. It's free lunch. Lunch is actually on me. What we're doing is we're just asking seniors to give a donation, and any donation they provide that day goes back to the food pantry. So it's just a win-win cause, and it's a great time for seniors to mingle with each other and maybe get a little information on needs that they might have in their life. So come on out next Wednesday. It's from 9 to 1 at Crossroads Christian Church, which is at 2331 Kellogg Avenue in Corona, California.
I love it. You should have been a news anchor. You're so
Oh,
good at that.
yeah.
Yes, and that next Wednesday is actually March 13th, which is a couple days before St. Patty's. So
Yeah,
you'll be sharing a little bit of luck of the Irish at your
absolutely.
booth. There's going to be like little treats and things that people could stop by and pick up, which is super fun.
Yep. Come on by and
Awesome.
say hi to us.
Yay. Okay, cool. Also, okay, so we have some guests coming on. I love it.
Wonderful.
We have the beautiful Keisha. Good morning. Good
Morning.
morning. I
All
love
right.
it. Oh, also Cece has come on. Hi, Cece.
Morning.
Yay, good morning. I love it when people join us live. Again, a little housekeeping. If you have any questions for Chris, he loves answering questions on the fly. So throw them out there and we will, any topic, there's nothing off the table. So we really just want to make sure that people feel comfortable knowing that there's a resource in town that in the entire Southern California area, actually, but
Yeah,
that you can ask questions because, people get weird about death. And
they do.
I think, Chris, I love the fact that you wanted to kind of open this up as a kind of a ministry to share that it's not so bad. Like it happens to
It's
everybody,
not.
and it's okay to have questions, right?
It is. It's so many people think it's taboo to talk about death, but really talking about it and getting it out there just kind of relieves the burden. I've talked to people saying that they've done some planning and they kind of put their wishes down, and they always tell me it's like, boy, I should have done this even years ago because it lightens this heavy burden on your life that just it's taken care of. And I can't be more of a proponent enough about pre-planning and at least sharing your wishes with your family.
Amen. Amen. It
Yeah,
does. It takes pressure knowing that, okay, check that off your list. And also, it
that's right.
relieves the burden on your kids because they don't have to wonder, what do I do? What do I call? I think I was sharing with another show that I took care of my grandmother her last 8 months of life, and she was almost 98. I mean, like, she passed like weeks before her birthday, and my mom and her brother put off planning her funeral. I mean,
Oh
put
my
like her
goodness.
thing. In fact, it was like 6 months before she died, and I said, "Mom, please, you're going to go on vacation. I don't know what to do if Graham passes," and she's close to that. Anyways, and so I think my grandma was also really relieved that they talked to her about it and asked her what she wanted, and so it was
Perfect.
such a great experience because of that. And so I encourage people to do it early, and you save money when you do that. So hello, who doesn't need
Absolutely.
that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into our first question,
Sure.
which might be um, it's kind of an interesting question. So it
Okay.
is, what needs to be done when a person passes away suddenly? And I'm going to go off screen again, but again, who do they call? What do they do? Like, because people aren't prepared for that. So what needs to be done when a person passes away suddenly?
Sure. So I guess it all depends on where the person passes away. If a person passes away at home, if like you were out and you came home and your spouse or someone had passed away at home and they weren't under a current doctor's care or being, treated for like a terminal illness, the first thing somebody has to do is call your local police department and report it so the police could come out to make sure that there was uh, no problems with the scene. Like if it wasn't like a homicide, it was more of a natural death. And then what would happen is, again, if there wasn't enough background on that person health wise, if they didn't have enough history, like if they didn't have a medical history, then most likely the local police department would call the county coroner. The coroner's office would come out, and then the coroner has the opportunity to do a couple things. The coroner can either, through their investigation, talking to the family, they could release their loved one into the direct care of the funeral home. But if there's some things that just don't make sense, the coroner then would take the body back to the coroner's office in the county. They would do an autopsy, they would do an investigation, and kind of find out what the person would have died from. If it's something where if it's more of a sudden death outside the home, if you're just aware, it would kind of be the same thing depending on the situation. If you were outdoors, if you were camping, if it was at a public area, the first thing you need to do is call law enforcement. They would, or call 911. They would either call the ambulance out to do an assessment. They'd call the police again, and then it would go through the coroner's office again in that criteria. So once the coroner gets involved, though, it's out of everybody's jurisdiction until the coroner completes their investigation. And so they can do their investigation within maybe just a couple days. It could take up to a week to 10 days just for their investigation. Then after their investigation, they have done either toxicology and blood work and urinalysis and things like that. And then they have lab works also. Those could actually take months till they get those back. So sometimes when we get someone that has an unattended death or death suddenly, that has no history of medical problems, it could take several months for us to come up with a cause of death because the coroner has to do all of their research. So sometimes it's hard. Families have a hard time putting closure to that when we give them a death certificate and it says pending or undetermined until the coroner comes up with their investigation. Once they're completed with their investigation and all their lab work, they will reissue and do an amendment to the death certificate. And then that death certificate will have whatever findings they find through all of their studies of finding out what the person had died from.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's a whole system in place.
There is a system in place, and really it's call 911 or call your police for them to come and do the first assessment, and then the coroner will get involved to do a further assessment.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but if it's someone who, if they do have a doctor,
Yes.
then you would call the doctor as well, or just call the
Well,
police and be done?
nope. Just call the police because what will the police will do will get the name of the doctor in through their police report. They'll ask some questions. Then the coroner will also ask those questions. So the coroner's office would call the doctor if the person had a physician. But we just had someone pass away here a couple weeks ago. They hadn't seen a doctor in over 20 years. They were like a
Wow.
naturopath. They were a naturopath. They didn't really have
Sure,
a regular physician. They just
sure.
kind of treated themselves holistically and stuff.
Well, they
And
lived for
so
20 years.
he had
Good
to
for
go to
them. That's great.
well, yeah. Yeah, and they were up in their 70s, 80s. They were older person, hadn't seen a physician for several years, but they died a natural death. But the coroner did get involved just to kind of just do a little investigation work, and everything was there was no homicide. It was not like a break-in. Somebody didn't get hit over the head or anything. It was just he
Right.
passed away in his sleep.
Sure.
It was just a natural death.
Natural
Yeah,
causes. Yeah, exactly. There is something called old age, right?
there is. It catches up with all of us.
It does. In fact, that's actually my next question. What
Sure.
is the most common type of death? Would it be disease, accident, old age, or there's something else? I'm just kind of curious.
You know what? It's kind of cyclical. Death, death hits all of us. Um, Pretty much disease out there. Heart disease, diabetes. Those are some really. We see that a lot on causes of death. So it's what they call arteriosclerotic heart disease. So it's like the thickening of the arteries. So a person would have like a heart attack. Um, diabetes in our society is bad with kind of all the processed foods that we eat these days and stuff. Our society eats a lot of fast food, and so we tend to eat a little bit more. And then with all the preservatives and things in foods today, it just doesn't assimilate in our bodies as well. So we have a lot of people dying of like diabetes. Um, Old age, though, we are close to a blue zone here in Southern California. A blue zone is where there was a lot of like centenarians, people that live to be 100 years old. And there's a city about 30 miles from us. It's called Loma Linda, California. And they have a high population of people living to be over 100 years old. And I think it's just because of the way they have their lifestyle of eating healthy and exercising and stuff. It's just one of those unique things. There's about 6 or 7 blue zones in the world on Earth, and where there are people that live to be really old, and we happen to be in one of those areas that is kind of cool that we're close to a blue zone. So we do have people dying. Unfortunately, we have people that die really old in their 80s, 90s, and hundreds, and then we have people dying really young, unfortunately. And with everything that's gone on in the world in the last several years, we have a lot of people with mental health and issues with just suicide and depression and things. And so we have a younger population dying also. So those that are in the middle, it goes either way with your health. I just say stay active and stay vibrant and stay involved, and you can live life to be a ripe old age to being another centurion here in Southern California.
I love that. That's a goal, right?
Yeah,
But it's also a goal to be
absolutely.
healthy at that age so you can enjoy your life and
Yes,
not be,
yep,
sick and a burden and things like that. So
yep.
it's really important. And if known as at not, I would say if you've been listening to this and you don't know what a blue zone is, um, there is a show, I think, a documentary on Netflix
Yeah,
called Blue Zone, and it is fascinating
it is.
of the people who live the longest, what they did a study on what, and you mentioned it, they're still like the active, like they crouch down to do their garden or clean,
Yep,
or they walk up hills a lot, or just typical things. They use their body the way that it was designed. And that
exactly.
causes an eating, like just eating things raw from the earth as much as possible. Like
Yep.
it's wild. Yes. Oh, so we have so many people who have joined us since we
Nice.
were sharing. We have Erica. Good morning. Happy
Good
Friday.
morning.
Love that. And
Hello.
Christina, good morning. Love it.
Awesome.
Oh, we got a little compliment. Thank you so much, Steve. Yes, we love
Great.
sharing all this stuff. And Lucy as well. Good morning, Lucy.
Wonderful.
And Haley's also joined us, the Circle of Life. It's
Right.
true. Like they say death and taxes. Way to go, love Melinda. It's true. I mean, we all have to deal with it, and it's just a fact of life. So
Yep.
it's up to us to take control of our health, to live a most vibrant, long life as possible. But eventually,
Absolutely.
time catches up. That's for sure.
It will. It will.
And that's okay. That is okay.
It
All right.
is.
So let's get to your next question.
You bet.
Goodness sakes here. Okay. So we have, I think you answered this one. Who notify, oh no, this is a different one. So who notifies you when someone dies? So if you're not with them in another country, they're away, who
So,
notifies you?
so most of the time we get there's 2 calls that we'll get, and we call anytime we receive a call to the funeral home, we call that a first call because it's the first kind of engagement that we're getting from either a family member. So sometimes a family will call and say, my parent or my child has just passed away, and we need your assistance. And so we'll talk to them a little bit, asking them a few questions of where they're at. Are they in a hospital? Are they at home? Are they at the coroner's office? So sometimes we hear directly from the family calling us. A lot of times, though, if someone's in a hospital or a care facility uh, or board and care, we will hear from the nurse or one of the administrators there at a facility saying that their patient or client has passed away and that the family has requested for us to come pick their loved one up and bring them into our care. So typically, the first call we get is either from a direct family member or someone from a care facility or hospital. So that would be how we get notified. Funeral homes, at least here in California, we're not allowed to like solicit uh, asking for people to come to us. We just can promote ourselves like we are here today and just giving people the insight of we're here and we're available when the need arises. And so that's what we do. And so people will call us, and sometimes it might be a friend or a neighbor calling on behalf of the family because they're too distraught. So that doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes we will have maybe a family or a next door neighbor calling saying, "Hey, I'm calling on behalf of a friend or neighbor that just lost their loved one." That happens periodically.
That's awesome. Thank you for answering my question. But I was actually asking who notifies the family when someone in their life passes away. So if you're in the military, like who calls the family? Or if they're, let's say, on vacation, who typically calls the family to let them know that their loved one has passed away?
Well, that would be depending. It all depends on where they pass away. So if their loved one dies at home and their family is all gone, and maybe it was somebody knocking on their door, or they saw something suspicious at the house. Again, they'll call the police. The police might come onto the scene and find somebody that had an unattended death. If somebody dies again in a care facility, it'd be the facility would call. So say you had grandma in the care home and you were her legal next of kin, you were her executor or her child. Usually the facility would call you saying that they passed away in their sleep overnight or something at the facility. So it's typically the facility that would call you, or if it was an unattended death at some other area, the police or law enforcement or sheriff may call you to notify you if you were out of the area. So if I were to pass away here at home and my family lived out of state, the police would have to come into my home and do some research and finding out phone numbers or addresses, maybe find my address book. That's why it's important to have in your cell phone, have some emergency contacts listed and stuff. They might find your phone. They'd have to hack into your phone and maybe get some phone numbers to find your family members to get a hold of them to let them know. Sometimes people are considered a John or Jane Doe. If somebody is out in the street or something and they pass away with no identification, they'll be taken into the coroner's care, and they might sit there for weeks until a family might say, my I don't know where my loved one is. And so sometimes they'll call and we'll say, hey, you need to call the county coroner, because typically any unclaimed body or bodies that aren't recognized or notified that have identification will go to the county of where they live and be held at the county. So then hopefully at some point they'll be identified in this, especially these days with DNA. They're closing a lot of cases now, and they're identifying people through DNA and special studies now, that the technologies that the coroner's office have at their disposal to identify people that may not have fingerprints or dental records, but just through DNA they can find out who people are. So that's a little deeper and further down the line, but typically law enforcement would notify families first, to keep it a simple question, I guess.
I
I
love it.
kind of started rambling on there, but
No, no, that's all fascinating information because people don't know, and that's
people
why
don't
we're doing
know.
the show.
People
I
don't
love it.
know.
All right. Well, if we have anybody who has any extra questions, we have one more question today. We're keeping it short and sweet
You bet.
because there's just so much, and we also have past shows that have so much great information, Chris. In fact, I want to make sure we know notified. We
We
announce
will.
our next show. I think we are going to be, let's see here. I want to make sure that we know when we're going to be on again. I will share that with us before we end. I believe it's in a couple weeks. But our last question today, Chris. Oh, are we getting all right? Are we good?
We're good. We're good.
Good, awesome. Okay, cool. So this is kind of an odd question, but it came
Okay.
in.
I like odd
And we love
questions.
odd questions. That's right. And so if someone dies with or without a will, answer what happens to their money. Like if they have a will or they don't
Uh-huh.
have a will, what happens to their money? A lot of people are interested in that.
Sure. If a person has a will, it definitely makes things easier. Especially if they have it, a legal will. Some people just do a handwritten will, and they might just say, I leave everything to my kids, or I leave everything to some organization. Um, and as long as it was kind of like stamped and notarized and kind of official, we can go with that. And sometimes families are happy about those wills, and sometimes families aren't happy. It's your choice, but it's so important to put a will together. An estate plan is so important, especially depending on what you have. There are some people that live very simple lives, but it's to carry things on and pass things on to their family. They should still put it down in writing, or at least discuss it with some family members. Discussion, though, doesn't hold up, though, in a court of law. It has to be written down and recorded. So definitely wills will definitely make your life easier for your family succession planning. For those that don't have wills, your money will go into what they call a probate, and it kind of goes into a holding area. And it's set there for several months until the courts and the family can decide who gets what. And then it's divided up amongst the family depending on how many family members there are. And it goes by legal next of kin. So if it's not a spouse, it'd be the children and then the brothers and sisters and further on down the line if there is no will. The government gets involved too. So the government kind of holds things because they want to make sure if you have any debt, your debts are paid off before it is distributed to your family too. So if you have outstanding liens against your home, or if you have outstanding bills that need to be paid, those will have to be all taken care of through your estate. And that's why they freeze all the assets to the estate. So I tell a lot of people, a lot of families will notify the banks right when the person dies. And if they don't have a cosigner on their bank account, those bank accounts are frozen for a couple months until they make sure all the checks are cleared and everything is cleared out of that bank account. And when they see no activity after a couple months, then they'll release that money back to the family. So you always want to make sure if you have a bank account that you put a spouse or a child or a relative or your executor or somebody else on your bank accounts. So then they will have access to those accounts at the time of your death. Or else, again, they're frozen. And unfortunately, we've had some families go to the bank right the day that mom died, says, "Oh, mom just died." And then they just put a big old red flag on that account and say, "Freeze." And then the family just froze the account that they needed to use to pay for the funeral. And then they have the money is there, but they can't get to it for a couple months. And it really puts families in a pickle. So we always tell the families, hold off just for like 7 to 10 days while we wait to get you the death certificates. Because if you've got the death certificates and you still can get things rolling, you still have access to that account until that you can close it out finally. So we always tell people, just don't be in a rush, take a breath, let us do the process, because the process, everybody wants things instantly these days, with cell phones and media and everything is now. It's like instant. Well, there's a protocol to get death certificates, and death certificates takes like 7 to 10 working days because we got to work with the doctors, we have to work with the county, it has to be registered with the state. It takes time. And so people need to be patient. And so when it comes to starting that paperwork of wills and probates and things, you need a certified death certificate also. So give us the time that we need to get all that information. We want to make sure all that information that we're putting on the death certificate is accurate, because if it's not accurate, then we have to go back and do it all over again and do an amendment, and that'll just further delay things. So when we go over it with families, when we sit down with them, we get all of their all their information for the documents, and we review it with them thoroughly. We have them look it over. So we have them sign off on it. We make sure it's all correct before we submit it to the county and the state. So then hopefully we don't have any of those hiccups or delays. But certified death certificates are important. Having a will is important. And if having those two things in place, you shouldn't have any problem getting your money and moving things that you need to through your estate. Also, those death certificates, whenever you are selling your parents' property after death, like selling a vehicle, selling a house, selling any of their assets, you may need to have a certified death certificate, because if they purchase those things and they're in their name and they're not in a family trust, or they put a second person's name on those items, you need that death certificate, because that death certificate is basically like their signature saying that, hey, they're not here to sign, but I'm on their behalf wanting to sell this item. I'm just not selling it out from underneath them, because you're showing them a death certificate. So that's a little synopsis of
No,
the
that's
will,
great.
the probate thing. So there was a lot we kind of covered right there, but there was a lot of good information. I think hopefully people could take away from that.
Yes. Oh, no, that's fantastic information because I think you're right. Like we will think everything happens so fast. Like they watch the
People want to
joke is they watch CSI and they solve a murder in 30 minutes.
they, they
And
think
you're
it
like,
happens like this.
wow. And like they complain to their police, why isn't this doing it? They do it on the show. But it's true. And
They,
I think that's
I know.
another benefit of your service, Chris. And by the way, Kathy joined us during that last segment.
Morning.
Nice to see you. Good morning, Kathy. Um, but I think that's another reason why it's really important to go to a funeral home that can help with all these details. Small independent funeral homes really care, and that's what Thomas Miller is. And
Yep.
that's, like I said, that should be your call that says, okay, take it out of your hands, especially when you're in a time of grief like that. You're not
Yep.
thinking clearly. You're just like overwhelmed with sorrow and like you just don't know what to do. So when you have somebody like Thomas Miller Mortuary taking
Yes.
care of all those details for you, you can just let it go and like process the situation with your family, like, and then they can handle it. Cause yeah, I've heard of those stories. Also, I was speaking with, in fact, I have her card. She was going to send me, we'll have to talk about it next time.
Yes.
She's a lawyer in Orange County, and she was telling me that there's um, a new regulations coming down. So regarding family trust,
Yes.
more like you just mentioned, put things into a family trust. There's some things coming down that's going to reduce the cap, which means that
Yes.
when we pass it on to our family, it's going to be more taxes. So we need to contact our legislators and say
Yep.
this is not cool. We
That's
don't
right.
need more of this.
That's
So
right.
so next show, look forward to that if you're tuning in.
Yeah.
That we'll be talking more about what's coming up to give you a little inspiration to go get your affairs in
Perfect.
order.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chris. I
You bet.
appreciate if anybody is interested in finding out more. There's no obligation, obviously. If you want to
Nope.
call any of we have a Corona Chapel at 951 737 3244, And we also have one in Riverside at the La Sierra location is 951 687 0551. You can call, they have free pre-planning guides. Again, just give you some peace of mind, give your family some peace of mind. I
Yeah.
think it's a great idea.
That's right.
Yay. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think we're done for today. And I was going to say,
Yep.
I went to find out when our next show was. I didn't even get it. I
It's
was so
March 29th.
Oh, you have it. Thank you. I was gonna say I was so enthralled with your answer that I didn't even look it up. So March
Yeah.
29th is our next show. So look forward to
March
that. We'll
29th.
talk about those rules and regulations of what we need to take care of.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, everybody. Until next time, March 29th, we will look forward to any questions you have. Just make comments and we'll get back to you. Thanks again
Wonderful.
for taking your time to join us today on the show. And
You
until
bet.
the next time, we are so grateful for you and you have a wonderful day and God bless.
Great. Thank you. Bye bye.